We're starting off today with AEW Dynamite as EVP's The Young Bucks took center stage during the show as they discussed their upcoming Dynasty match with FTR. Of course, fans were more interested in seeing the much anticipated backstage footage from All In, and true to their word, the footage did show CM Punk and Jack Perry's altercation. The two can be seen arguing, presumably over Perry's real glass line, before Punk pushes Perry twice and gets him in a choke in a chaotic scene from Wembley Stadium. Samoa Joe and the crew present backstage calmed things down, and credit has to be given for this not being a bait and switch, as some fans had anticipated. The Young Bucks used this moment to reflect on their journey as businessmen, particularly their loss to FTR at All In, while also proving CM Punk to be the real aggressor last August. The brothers ended the segment by hyping up the Bucks vs FTR 4 at Dynasty before FTR came to the ring and said that everyone is ready to move on from what's happened. They talked for a few minutes and made a hybrid promo about AEW moving forward and hyping their match against the Bucks, though the idea of AEW moving forward seems like a hollow one. For all the talk of moving on, AEW were the ones who decided to air this footage on their internationally broadcasted show, giving Punk ample airtime on their programming. While it was creative to use the footage to hype a feud with four men not in the footage, it still felt unnecessary and a reactionary response to Punk's previous comments with Ariel Helwani. At the end of the day, this isn't going to change much. Punk fans will still be Punk fans, Punk haters will still be Punk haters, and fans and haters of AEW will view this in very different ways. Odds are that if you went into Dynamite loathing Punk, you still do, and if you went into the show thinking Tony Khan is a clown, as Punk said at the time, you probably still think he is. The footage is so subjective based on personal opinion, and while the Bucks and FTR seemed passionate in their performances, they could have brought that to any promo. One person who certainly didn't enjoy the all-in footage was Tony Schiavone, who looked absolutely miserable at the commentary table during the segment. On Twitter, fans suggested that Schiavone was not okay with the reveal, and some said he was having flashbacks from his time in the dying days of WCW. Now that fans have seen Punk's aggressive side, which was on display backstage at All Out 2022 as well, the best in the world took to social media to respond to the segment. In his Instagram stories, Punk shared a photo of President George W. Bush with a banner reading "Mission Accomplished," stating that AEW had accomplished what they wanted to do. While Punk didn't mention AEW in his cryptic response, it's clear that this was aimed at AEW for their actions, and we'll have to see if Punk gives an actual statement in the near future. Tony Khan has said that airing the footage was done solely to give fans the best show, though many have claimed it was to stick it to Punk, following his comments on the MMA Hour show. When asked about Punk's comments on the show, Khan said that it was interesting timing given where everything stands, but did not go into further details about what he meant. If Khan did want to stick it to Punk, his plan may have backfired, as in live footage from Dynamite, fans can be heard cheering for Punk, which is hardly the response Khan wanted. There was even a thank you chant at the end of the segment, as seen in the live footage, though it's unclear if the fans are chanting "Thank you Punk" or "Thank you Khan." Nevertheless, this footage did not prevent some fans at Dynamite to be on Punk's side, despite what Tony Khan may have intended when he chose to release the footage. Names in wrestling also responded to the footage, as NXT superstar and AEW alum Shawn Spears shared a gif of a man throwing a ball and hitting himself when it bounces back. Spears is clearly of the belief that releasing the footage has backfired on AEW, while Bully Ray said the chants for Punk as the footage were aired were no bueno. Over 7 months after his AEW exit, Punk continues to be a talking point within the company, and what was your reaction to this footage? Let us know in the comments below. More from AEW now, as Mercedes Mone has been a top star since her arrival a few weeks ago, and has her sights set on the TBS Championship. On Dynamite this week, Mone expressed her desire to challenge for the title at Double or Nothing, whether against Julia Hart or Willow Nightingale, and what would be her first match for AEW. The CEO became emotional while discussing her career-threatening injury sustained during her match against Nightingale back in May 2023, and Mone said she has a plan going forward. However, at that moment, the lights went out, and as they came back, Mercedes Mone was found to be lying on the ground, attacked by some unknown assailant, and visibly in immense pain. Mercedes has had beef with both Hart and Nightingale as of late, with Willow even showing signs of turning heel a few weeks back when she seemed ready to hit her with a steel chair. As for Julia Hart, she will defend her TBS title against Nightingale at AEW Dynasty, with the winner of that match destined to defend against Mercedes Moné. It'll be interesting to see who the perpetrator behind this attack on Mercedes is and what the intentions were, as it certainly adds a new layer of intrigue to Moné's AEW run so far. As for when the attacker will be revealed, time will tell, but somebody is out to get the CEO ahead of her first match for AEW. On a recent edition of the Pat McAfee Show, as part of WWE World, Triple H spoke about his hiring mindset and why a wrestler may choose another company over WWE. In his passionate speech, the chief content officer said that some stars favor a lighter schedule in companies other than WWE, and didn't mince his words on the show, stating, "When I see people coming out of trying to make it, and then they pick a job where, well, they work less, the schedule is lighter, then I'm like, I'm glad I didn't pick you. If you're not in it for the grind, at that point earlier in your career, you have no business being here." Well, on this week's AEW Dynamite, Will Ospreay was interviewed by Renee Paquette, and the aerial assassin had some choice words for the game's recent comments. Ospreay addressed Triple H's comments of not having the grind and claimed to be one of the hardest workers in the industry, but didn't stop there. Ospreay added that he was part of some of the best matches in wrestling history, before claiming that Triple H only rose to the top because of his relationship with Stephanie McMahon. "There's this rumor going round, right? There's this rumor that I'm afraid of the grind. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea where this conversation has come from, because I'm one of the only guys that are traveling every single week to the UK and America, 8-10-hour flights every single week. I'm delivering some of the best professional wrestling matches this world has ever seen. Bruv, normally I wouldn't rise to this type of bait, but seeing as the guy who said it is only in the position he's in because he was grinding on the boss's daughter, you're in no position to tell me what the grind is all about, my friend, because you have no idea what I fight for. Let this be a painful jab back and a gentle reminder that you will not throw stones at an assassin with a machine gun." Ospreay clearly took Triple H's comments on hiring new talents very personally, though it's unclear if the game was speaking about Will when saying some stars prefer a lighter schedule. It's also unknown if the two sides had talks before Ospreay signed with AEW last year, but it would be interesting to see if this goes any further in the next few weeks. At WWE NXT Stand and Deliver, Josh Briggs challenged Oba Femi for the North American title in a physical triple threat match that also saw Dijak thrown in the mix. In the end, it was Femi who once again stood tall, and this intense, brutal match has left Briggs on the shelf for the time being. During this week's NXT, Vic Joseph announced that Briggs had suffered 2 cracked ribs during the match and would be out of action for the foreseeable future. At this time, there's no word on when fans can expect to see Briggs back in the ring, but we're wishing him a full and speedy recovery at this time. More from AEW Dynamite as Adam Copeland once again retained the AEW TNT Championship, this time against Penta El Cero Miedo. Penta, a former AEW World Tag and Trios champion, threw out the challenge on last week's Dynamite, and Penta took an early lead with a series of explosive strikes. Not to be outdone, Copeland used a sharpshooter and a crossface to ground the luchador and busted out a power slam on the apron in a new spot from the WWE Hall of Famer. Penta nearly secured the win with an avalanche code red, but it was Copeland who kept his reign with a spear to get the win. The announcers did a good job making it seem like Penta was a viable challenger, even though nobody expected the title to change hands here. For two guys who have never worked together, these two had great chemistry, and Copeland was a good base for the high flyer, but he didn't let Penta have all the fun. Copeland pulled off a few impressive feats, including a head scissor takedown and a few leapfrogs in a row, but he was always going to be outdone in that department by Penta. After the match, Copeland was ambushed by the House of Black and placed in a choke while Julia Hart taunted him, but Willow Nightingale would make the save for the ex-WWE star. Willow immediately went for her AEW Dynasty opponent, and that gave Copeland the room to take out Brody King, and a mixed tag team match was announced for next week's Dynamite. The TNT title match is one that could have felt more important with a few weeks of build, and while it delivered some highly enjoyable action, it happened during a very strange first half hour. A disjointed opening with an attack and a delayed match would set a strange tone for the first half hour of the show, which couldn't help but be felt in this otherwise enjoyable contest. In the second high-stakes match to feature a Rhodes family member within the last week, Dustin Rhodes had a huge opportunity against Samoa Joe on this week's Dynamite. On last week's Collision, Dustin spoke about wanting to win a world title in a major promotion and called out Joe to put his AEW World Championship on the line. The Samoan submission machine refused the title shot, but did agree to grant Rhodes an eliminator match, giving him the chance to earn a title shot in the future. The match was supposed to open Dynamite in Charleston, West Virginia, but Joe was attacked by his Dynasty 2024 challenger Swerve Strickland, resulting in the match being postponed. Instead of the opener, Rhodes brought the fight to Joe in the main event of the show, and even being busted open by Joe did little to slow down the former Goldust. At one point, Rhodes contemplated using the AEW World title on Joe, but ended up not doing so, instead nearly pinning the reigning AEW World Champion with a crossroads. However, Joe had no such hesitation and turned the tables on Dustin, clocking him with the championship belt to pick up the win, ensuring Dustin didn't finish his story this week. Right now, nobody is more popular in WWE than the undisputed Universal Champion Cody Rhodes, but things did not come easy for the American Nightmare. Fans will remember that it was in 2016 that Rhodes opted to leave WWE, believing he could make himself a bigger star outside the company, which he certainly did. During the Insight podcast, Cody's brother Dustin was asked about Cody's underwhelming initial WWE run and what's different this time around. He said, "More wisdom, more business sense. He's gotten very smart for his age in a short period of time, and he studies. He is a studier of the business." After making a name on the Independents, Ring of Honor, and AEW, Cody returned to WWE as a bigger star, and his star has only grown over the past 2 years. Now Rhodes is ready to lead WWE in this new era, something that fans would never have expected for him during his first run with the company. Back to Dynamite, which also saw AEW Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada handily defeat Cristiano Argento and earned the win without breaking a sweat. This was Okada's first match on Dynamite since winning the title from Eddie Kingston last month, and after the match, accepted a challenge previously thrown out by Pac. Okada accepted the challenge for a title match at AEW Dynasty, making the British star the first challenger for the gold since Okada won the title. Pac came out to confront Okada, returning from a recent break, but the Elite took the opportunity to surround him, which prompted FTR to come out and even the odds. That ultimately proved futile, as Okada brought out a steel chair and took it to FTR with the Elite standing tall, as the faction has been on a roll ever since welcoming Okada into the fold. Toni Storm may have intended to toast Thunder Rosa on Dynamite, but this quickly devolved into her throwing a drink at her AEW Dynasty challenger. This played out quicker than expected and felt like a segment that would have been longer any other week, perhaps had AEW not dedicated a portion of their show to a certain ex-employee. Deonna Purrazzo coming out to help and then immediately leaving when Rosa pushed her away felt tacked on and seemed a bit too obvious that a turn was coming. What came next saw Mariah May defeat Anna Jay, but was attacked by Jay after the match, who had the understudy of the Women's World Champion in a chokehold. That was until the debuting Mina Shirakawa came out to save May and sent Jay running, and then began celebrating with Mariah May while holding a couple of glasses of champagne. Not only did Shirakawa feel like celebrating, but she also ended up kissing May on the lips, which she also did a few days earlier backstage at ROH Supercard of Honor. May and Mina do have a history, as the pair were a force in Stardom and are former Goddess of Stardom champions, the company's version of women's tag team titles. It remains to be seen whether Mina's arrival could cause issues between May and her mentor, but the Japanese star certainly made an impression during her AEW Dynamite debut. Now, WrestleMania 40 was a mixed night for Drew McIntyre, to say the least, and ahead of the show, he claimed that UPS had lost his gear before asking Punk if he could borrow some. While this was a dig at the injured Punk, it turns out that Drew's gear was indeed lost ahead of the show, and that a last-minute replacement had to be crafted. Jason Baker, who has designed costumes for WWE, including The Fiend, revealed that his wife left night one early and stayed up until 6 a.m. to craft replacement gear for McIntyre. Mrs. Baker's hard work paid off, as Drew had gear for WrestleMania 40 Night 2, as it was more than the World Heavyweight Championship that the Scottish Warrior lost last week. Instead of Drew McIntyre, it was Damian Priest who left Philadelphia as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion after he cashed in Money in the Bank in Philadelphia. Priest would celebrate on the stage with his Judgment Day cohorts, and this understandably proved to be a huge moment for the new World Champion. During an appearance on The Bump, Priest was visibly emotional as he spoke about that moment and was struggling to keep the tears at bay as he discussed WrestleMania, saying, "There is one moment that's going to stick with me forever. It was doing this," referring to winning the title. "That moment, standing on that stage with my best friends, I've seen the pictures and I've seen their faces and how happy they were. That means the world to me, that they were genuinely happy for me. I'm proud to have them with me." Priest's journey to the top has been a long one for the Archer of Infamy, who disclosed during the WrestleMania 40 press conference that he'd been homeless 10 years earlier. Now, Priest is the champion and already has a challenger lined up in Jey Uso, but the Judgment Day member plans on keeping the gold with the group for a long time to come. During this week's NXT, Tatum Paxley turned on Lyra Valkyria and ambushed the former NXT Women's Champion at ringside to end their alliance. Paxley had evidently only been on Lyra's side whilst the Valkyrie held the NXT Women's Championship, but this was something of an off-the-cuff attack on the Irish superstar. Fightful Select reports that Paxley's heel turn was not rehearsed ahead of the show, and it was kept top secret backstage, with only those involved in the segment knowing what was coming. Paxley and Valkyria are expected to feud going forward, leaving champion Roxanne Perez without a challenger. So we'll wait and see who steps up to the prodigy in WWE NXT. This week's NXT also saw the War Dogs lose the NXT Tag Team Championships to Axiom and Nathan Frazier and mark the end of Bron Breakker's NXT run. After being drafted to SmackDown in February, Breakker cut a goodbye promo after this week's NXT, but what does that mean for his partnership with Baron Corbin? Fightful Select notes that the tag match was indeed Breakker's final match in NXT, but it may not be his final match with Corbin, as there's been pitches for Corbin to join him on SmackDown. The War Dogs have proven to be a popular duo in NXT, and fans may be seeing much more of the former tag team champions in spite of their defeat this past Tuesday. Are you excited at the prospect of the War Dogs on SmackDown, or should Breakker do his own thing on the main roster? Give your thoughts in the comments section below. On this week's Raw, John Cena made his return to the ring to team with the Awesome Truth and defeat the Judgment Day, and Cena also reached a massive milestone in the process. With his match this week, Cena continued his record of having at least one TV match a year for WWE, a record that began with his main roster debut against Kurt Angle in 2002. Cena has spoken openly about his career coming to an end, but it won't happen just yet, as John's record of WWE matches continues on for another year. In six-man tag team action on Dynamite, Shane Taylor, Lee Moriarty, and Anthony Ogogo were victorious in the first outing as a trio when they beat Hook, Chris Jericho, and Katsuyori Shibata. Moriarty pinning Shibata is kind of a big deal based on how Shibata has been booked, and this win was a welcome upset and bodes well for Shane Taylor Promotions. It's been months since Adam Cole last wrestled for AEW as he's still recovering from an ankle injury, and this week, the Devil hit back when a fan accused him of not going to the gym. In a tweet, Cole said he's never worked harder to try and get back in the ring, but there's still no word on when he's expected back from this latest setback. And that was AEW Dynamite, which was arguably the most hotly anticipated Dynamite in some time, even if that anticipation was more so for CM Punk instead of the actual roster. But what did you think of the show? Did it deliver what it promised mere days ahead of AEW Dynasty? Let us know in the comments below. And we're ending with Jack Perry, who last competed for AEW at All In, but with CM Punk gone and the footage out there, it's believed that Perry will be returning to programming down the line. Perry has been quite the talking point in AEW despite not being seen for over half a year now, and this week, a rather unfortunate video of the former Jungle Boy resurfaced online. Amid the online chatter about Perry's return, a fan shared footage of Jack's match with Killswitch at Full Gear 2022, in which Perry dives off of the top of the steel cage. The plan had been for Perry to smash into Killswitch and obliterate the table the former Luchasaurus was on, but Perry bounces off his former tag partner, and the table stands. This is hardly a good look for Perry, who has often been criticized for his smaller frame, and he'll no doubt hope to avoid this botch repeating when he's back in the ring.